Hey, how you doing? I hope you're well. I'm Deanna and welcome to my channel. And today I'm going to go through all the books that I read in the month of August. Now, August was a much better reading month than the month of July. Probably because I was a little bit less stressed. No. I was just as stressed, but I was dealing with less pain stuff, so I had more energy to read. So let's get on to the bookish stats. I read 14 books in the month of August for a total of 5,007 pages, and my average star rating was 4.5 stars, which is just wild. As you can see for the breakdown, I had 4 5 stars, 8 4.5 stars, 1 4 star, and 1 3.5 star. Having a look at the genre breakdown, I was still in full comfort reading mode, so we're gonna see no variation here. So I read predominantly paranormal, so I read 9 paranormal romances, 4 fantasy romances, and 1 straight up romance. My focus for August was to read arcs and to read sequels, and the next few stats are gonna tell us if we succeeded or not. So having a look at the first one, which is formats, we definitely did a great job at reading arcs. They were my second biggest format, so I did read 6 audiobooks, 5 arcs, 2 audiobooks, and 1 paperback. So not too surprising that I'm not reading a lot physically. Now, moving into the series versus standalones, I read only series books this month, with 3 books being first books in the series, but 11 were sequels, which was absolutely crazy, and I did manage to finish a series as well, which is just an extra fun bonus. So let's dive in to my thoughts and feelings on the book. For those that are series, I am gonna group them together just in case I can't talk about the sequel. So first book I finished this month was When He Desires by Gabriella Sanz, which is the first book in her Fallen God duet, and this is a dark mafia romance, and we are following Nero. So if you are familiar with the Fallen series, which you definitely should read before diving into this one, you are aware who Nero is. And Nero has basically had to fake his death, and he's holed up in this tiny small town in Missouri with a new name, just trying to survive, as he is wanted by one of the rival mafia families, the Ferreros in New York. And he has been basically exiled with his friend and driver Sandro, or Sam, and they have driven as far as they could from any kind of major city in hopes that it's gonna be far enough away from any kind of crime syndicate, and they have picked Darkwater Hollow, and they end up buying a construction business called Handy Heroes and are basically gonna give a shot at this normal mundane life. And then we have Blake, and Blake is kind of seen as the town outcast. She did have hopes and dreams of leaving, but her mother got really sick, so she came back to take care of her. Unfortunately, her mother is since passed prior to the start of this book, and she is basically trying to flip her house so she can sell it, pay off her mum's medical bills, and go to the first city she can find. And she first meets Nero, or Rowan, when they rock up to the town's local bar, and she's been forced to wait tables rather than to sit behind the bar like normal. And she's very prickly, like she is the grumpy to the grumpy sunshine in this situation, and he makes some charming comment and calls her babe or doll, and she like literally puts the line down and was like, don't you ever call me that again. And it's their kind of antagonistic relationship, and the ending was wild. Like, I would say a good 85% of this book is set in a small town, so we do get the small town vibe. There is the hint of the dark mafia just when we get Rowan's perspective, because he is really struggling with the fact that he had it all. He had everything he ever wanted. He was at the top of his game, and all of a sudden he has nothing. Everything he's worked for, all his friends and his family have what he feels is essentially abandoned him through no fault of his own. And the only reason he's in this mess is because of a mistake that his best friend and his Don made. And so he's really dealing with this kind of rage and injustice of it all. So that's the kind of hints. And I do love it from his perspective, where you kind of almost see he's got the devil and the angel on his shoulder. Like, he'll be like instantly like, I'm gonna fucking kill that guy, and then the other guy's like, no, we can't do that now, like you gotta like find a balance. So that was great, and I loved their relationship. So Rowan is instantly fascinated by Blake because she's one of the few women who hasn't wanted to dive into bed with him, and they end up forming this kind of tentative friendship when he moves in next door to her. And then through an accident she ends up living with him while her house gets gets fixed and he asks her to fake date him because he slept with one of the prominent town folks' wives and didn't know it. So he needs a image rehab so that his new business doesn't go under. And it is just so good. The steam is steaming. I completely loved it, and the fact that it ended the way it did. We are definitely leaving the small town and we're heading back to the mafia. So I love Gabriella Sands. I think the way she writes her characters is beautifully complicated. The way she writes these romances, the way she writes the mafia. I'm not saying the woman is part of the mafia, but I wouldn't be surprised if I ever found that out. So if you like a dark mafia romance, I highly recommend picking up this book. But if you want to treat yourself, I'd recommend picking up the Fallen series, starting with When She Unravels first. The next two books I picked up were part of the same series, and that is Bonded by Thorns and Woven by Gold by Elizabeth Helen. I won't give you too much details of Woven by Gold because this series follows the same relationship throughout it. Basically, it is a Why Choose Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I completely adored it. So we are following Rosalind, who is living in Orca Cove and is considered to be the weird girl because her dad is the town crazy person, and he is some kind of academic, and he has pretty much spent his life savings on trying to find his wife, who he believes was taken by fairies. So Rosalind is just really trying to fit in. She wants to open up a bookstore. That's really her main goal. And in the start of it, her ex-boyfriend, who is an absolute weasel of a man, comes back and is basically had his fun in the sun, sleeping around in college, and is determined to marry her, whether Rosalind really cares or not. Thankfully, their engagement party is broken up, and Rosalind ends up searching for her father in the forest and goes through a rose bush into the Enchanted Vale, where she finds a couple of fae princes. One being Caldarian, who has locked her father up in the dungeon for stealing a rose, and she makes a deal. She will stay there if they free her father, and she is also going to try and help lift the curse on them. So as you can see, lots of nods and notes to Beauty and the Beast, and I even love that there's lots of nods to the Disney movie. That was such a fun touch. Rosalind is thrown deep into this fairy world. It is a Why Choose with the 4 fae princes who are the guardians after the fairy queen has gone missing. We have Caldarian, the winter prince, who is supposed to be like the High Lord and the like commander-in-chief basically. We have Ezran, who is the spring prince. Then we have Dayton, who is the playboy summer prince, and we have Fallon, who is the autumn prince, and they're all kind of have these beast sides to them. We also have the Prince Caspian. He's the Prince of Thorns, and I believe he might have something to do with it. But yeah, completely adored this one. The audiobook was fantastic, and I am very excited to continue on with the series. I believe the 4th book is going to be out soon. The steam in here doesn't really pick up until book 2, but I really loved watching Rosalind get to know all the princes. And I know I've said it before, but one of the things I love about a Why Choose is that we do get to see the romances develop at different paces, and they're all at this point in the story feeling very lost and hopeless as the curse is about to take them. But if you're in the mood for a really fun Why Choose fantasy romance, I would recommend this one 100%. I picked up Breath of Fresh Air by Allegra Hall. To no one's surprise that I completely fallen in love with Allegra Hall's writing, and this is the next book set in her like unraveling monsters world. This takes place after A Wolf in the Garden, and we're actually following Ali's mum, Amia, and it is her romance with an Australian werewolf shifter named Brett, and it was just beautiful. I love the small town vibes. I'm not normally a fan of small town, but if you add monsters and paranormal stuff and things, it is totally my jam. And even though it's less than 100 pages, I really felt that I got to know both Brett and Amia, and it is just beautiful. So both of these characters are in their late 40s, early 50s, so I loved kind of seeing that dynamic, but it made it interesting in the fact that ever since Ali's been born, Amia's focus has really been on raising her daughter, and I think she's kind of shot herself up after the events that happened with Ali's dad, and I think she had to grow up a bit quickly to kind of keep Ali alive and do all that adulting stuff and things. And now she's also taking care of her ailing father. Even though he is in like a nursing home, she does, you know, go visit him regularly and just make sure that he has the best life he possibly could have. So I think she's forgotten a little bit about taking care of herself. She's very much set and safe in her little world, and Brett comes in like this blaze of color and changes everything. And Brett's moved to New Zealand because his baby mama is actually from New Zealand, and they hooked up when she was having a summer in Australia, and he did the responsible thing and moved to New Zealand away from his pack to help raise his daughter, and I think he sees her like every weekend. It's very cute, and he's kind of instantly drawn to Amia. So this first takes place at Ali and Xander's wedding, and they kind of catch eyes across, you know, the ballroom, and unfortunately it wasn't meant to be, as Brett has to go wrangle his drunk nephew who is completely legless, and he has to go and do the responsible thing and make sure the kid doesn't, like, you know, kill himself with alcohol poisoning. And the thing I completely adore about this book is that the sections are split up into months, so there is just some months where they can't see each other, and there might just be a couple of pages of like, we'll catch up next time. And I think for Amia, she's really struggling with the unveiling, and I guess it really just broadened her eyes to realize that the world isn't exactly what she thought it was. And Brett is all in. Like, Brett is like, yep, this is my woman, this is who I'm going to be with, she's the light of my life. But Amia really is struggling with putting herself first, really. Like, both Ellie and her dad have to be like, Mom, like, Amia, it's your time now. If this man makes you happy, you do not have to stay at the same job you've been in for like the last 20 years, live in the same house, do the same things. Like, we're allowed to adapt and grow, and I really love that. And yeah, completely adored this one, loved being back in this world, and very excited for the next installment. Basically, if you love small town romance vibes, if you love monsters and paranormal, highly recommend this series. Added bonus is that it's set in New Zealand, which is just completely beautiful. And like with The Wolf in the Garden, we do have the Maori influence, and that is just such a beautiful addition to the story that I completely adore. And then I picked up Primal Mirror by Nalini Singh, which is the most recent installment of the Psy Changeling series, and it's one of my most anticipated reads of the year. To no surprise, this is another 5-star from me, and this one we're following Auden Scott, who is a Psy and is actually the daughter of 2 of the big bads that have happened in earlier books in this series, and the alpha of the Rainfire Leopard pack called Remy. And I'm not going to say too much about the macro plot because we are like 23 books into this series, but I will just say the way Nalini Singh is able to create these fully contained stories where you learn about 2 people and now they come together and really learn to heal and find out who they are, while also being able to push this really big, intense macro plot is crazy. And most of this stories takes place on the Rainfire Pack's lands, which is kind of rural in the Rocky Mountains. We're really disconnected from what's happening in the city. At the start of the chapters, we do get some insights into what's happening with the Psynet, and it's all there as context for like what's happening in the big overarching world for these 2 people. And Auden is struggling with the fact that she is losing time. So she is waking up covered in bruises, having no memory of how long it's been. Like, she's having these like blackout periods where the last thing she remembers was like 4 days ago, it could have been an hour ago, but there is footage and people are telling her that, you know, she's negotiating multi-million-dollar tech business deals, and there's all these things that are happening. So she's trying to separate herself from the Scott Psy clan and ends up going to one of her dad's properties, which is on the border of the Rainfire Pack, as a way to try and figure out what's happening to her and try to survive because something sinister is going on. And then we have Remy, who is a relatively new alpha, and I completely love this pack. I'm hoping we're going to get some more books set here because we've had a few minor characters from the Dark River pack come through, and he is really struggling with the responsibility. He knows he's an alpha and he's got his biggest heart and so much love to give, but his dad was a complete piece of shit and abandoned him as a child, and his mum has passed away, so he kind of holds on to people really closely, and he knows that as an alpha, if he does that, he's going to stifle his pack because they're changelings. They need the freedom to be able to go off, learn, try, fail, and just know that they can come back, and he's there to protect them. So I just love watching him navigate that kind of dynamic, and then I think with Auden is able to get that sense of can kind of hold really tight and make sure she's protected, because that's something that she has never had at all in her life, because her parents were 2 of the Psy Council rulers and were silent and treated her with no love and affection. So I think that ended up being like a really great balance. Super excited for more in this world. It is one series that I never want to end. And then I picked up The Scent of Us Part 2 by Alana Lee, which is the conclusion of Juno's story. I'd been like sitting on this since I finished the first one, and I really needed to know what happened. So this is an Omegaverse set in Australia, set in Melbourne in particular, which I personally love, and it is a darker Omegaverse because with the whole hierarchy, Omegas are still and have been forced into bonds by alphas. Juno herself has escaped a quite horrific domestic violence situation where her dad sold her to this crime family as a way to wipe his gambling debt, which is just brutal. But in this world, the Omega Council, I can't remember the official term, but like there's like a council that's supporting Omega rights, have been funding research to get bonds dissolved. So in this, we have been watching Juno as she learns to become who she's always meant to be and deals with her trauma, but also finds a couple of her scent matched mates and kind of builds a pack. So I love the build a pack element in here. In particular with Ari, I love the way that that has been resolved. There was some tension in terms of his past trauma with an Omega coming in and ruining his pack and having this really limited idea of what an Omega could be that was almost stereotypical, and the actions that he undertakes in this book to help prove to Juno that he is there to provide for them as a pack and understands that she is not the previous Omega that he's been traumatized by was beautiful. I love the dynamic between Isaac and Juno because Isaac is the prime alpha of the pack, and while they've had this kind of platonic relationship where they both recognize that each other is a safe space and that they belong to the same family, it's never been like sexual on either person's part, but the way their dynamic develops is completely beautiful, and the way they're able to capture the Zhao pack and kind of finally get rid of that threat to Juno was absolutely amazing. I love the fact that we get Juno's brother back in the story and he's kind of dealing with the fact that he has also unintentionally abandoned her, and then we get a hint of what the Heat of Us is going to be, which is Hazel's pack, who I'm so excited for, and you're gonna not be able to stop me from picking this up this month. And I'm very excited for it. I think I was still in like a very cozy comfort mood, so I just binge read a series, and the series I finished off was the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. So I finished Always Practice Safe Hex, Resting Witch Face, and Grim and Bear It, and I just love the titles. This series is set in New Orleans and is following the Savoy sisters as they try and just navigate everyday life and they find the loves of their lives. So for Always Practice Safe Hex, we're following Livy Savoy. Her gift is in persuasion, so she can influence people, and she is the kind of social media marketing PR guru of the sisters, and she has joined this grant or competition where the winning supernatural gets funding by this big company and it's really going to boost their career. So she been paired up with a final kind of hurdle in a group assignment with another warlock and a grim named Gareth Blackwater, and these two instantly dislike each other because Gareth makes some offhanded comment about how Livy only got where she was because she used her power, which instantly pissed Livy off, which I'm on Livy's side. Like, just because her gift is, you know, to use influence, it doesn't necessarily mean that she can't get where she is in life just by hard work and determination. And, you know, she never threw in his face that Grimm's are technologically savvy and, you know, maybe he used his power to get there. So they're forced into working on a group together to create awareness of a supernatural cause, and then whoever wins will end up, you know, with the big prize, the money, the deal, and all the accolades. And this was great. I loved, actually this is the first book we've had with the Grimm, so I loved learning a bit more about them. And if you're a fan of the Side Changeling series, they really give me Arrow vibes in the way that they can be like super tech savvy, they've got like telekinetic psychic abilities, and yes, there's some interesting stuff happening. Trigger warnings for sexual assault in here, so please be aware of that, but just absolutely adored their dynamic and the fact that they finally get together and they've been working on a cause for like supernatural foster care. It's just so sweet and completely loved it. Because I was then fully obsessed with the world, I immediately dived into Resting Witch Face, which is Jules's book, and Jules and Ruben are the second chance moment of this series, and they have been skirting around each other for the entire series. So 12 years ago, Jules and Ruben were in a relationship together, but Jules cut it off, and we find out that she was scared of, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but witches who become blood hosts to vampires can then crave this mania where they lose their mind and all they care about is the vampire's bite because it has that pleasure toxin to it. And at the time as well, Jules's mum had just stepped down as head enforcer of the New Orleans Coven, so she was stepping up, and the last thing she wanted was for Reuben to take control and people to undermine her authority in this really powerful position, which people would already second guessing her because she was the youngest enforcer to ever take the role. And these two are now on a road trip of sorts to go to all covens in the States to get them to agree to overturn the ruling that the werewolves cannot be part of the supernatural council. So the werewolves in this world were created as a curse from a witch. She cursed a witch hunter, and they've been seen as this like beastly, rageful, uncontrollable supernatural creatures. So they're really pushed to the outskirts of this community, and they don't have any say in what happens to them. In an earlier book, one of the sisters was able to infuse these tattoos to help the wolves calm their beasts. So Jules as the head forcer of New Orleans and Reuben as a very powerful vampire lord are going around and trying to plead the case that we should overrule it. Things go a bit south in Salem, I believe it is. Last minute, Reuben makes an agreement that they have to halt their agreement as long as they go to England, and if the English covens will agree to it, they will have to fall in line. However, England is this really kind of dark, vampire-run place, and werewolves are a bit ousted to the Highlands of Scotland, so it's going to be a bit tense to try and get that sorted. And obviously we have like a road trip, forced proximity. The pair kind of understand where they were coming from 12 years ago and realize that where they are now, they've both grown. Reuben is no longer that kind of arrogant person he was 12 years ago. He does and has been diverting to Jules's authority, and I think Jules she's the elder sister of 6, and she's also runs a couple of businesses. She's the head of the ruling supernatural body in New Orleans, that she doesn't really have anyone to take care of her, and I think Reuben is finally there to show her that he will always stand by her side and support all her decisions, and she can run the show like in public, but in the privacy of their own home, he is going to be the one to take care of her and take control, and I just completely loved them. Also loved getting to skip across the pond and seeing what's happening in England. Then the last book was Grim and Bear It, and this is another romance which has been hinted about since the very start, and we have another Grim based on the title. We have Clara Savoy, who can read auras, and she is this sweet, bubbly, positive, determined ray of sunshine. And then we have Henry Blackwater, who is a Grim who struggles with his own power, and because of that he's suppressing his power. He struggles a lot with anxiety and depression, and Clara, throughout the whole series, she knows based on one of her sisters who's got premonition that she's going to end up with Henry, and she has been doing everything she can to try and let him know that she's interested. But because Henry has like zero experience dating or anything like that, he's not picking up on any of the signs, and because she's so sweet and nice and bubbly to everybody else, he just is completely clueless. So I love that we've got her at the start of the book being like, that's it, I'm doing it, I'm gonna get my man and I'm gonna show him that I mean it. And it is just so good. Clara runs a book club and a book blog, and then she finds out that Henry has been reading the books and commenting, and so she invites him along to the book club as like a way to, you know, get them in forced proximity with each other. And it's just amazing, the unwavering faith and positivity she has towards this relationship, this endgame, and the way she's able to bring kind of light and reassurance to Henry as he's like scared of his power is just so beautiful. I completely love Clara, and Henry is just this absolute sweet cinnamon roll. We have a virgin hero, and he will do anything and everything to protect her, and it was just so good. And I love the way it ended. This was a really great end to the Savoy sisters. We kind of get this epilogue where we see them all a couple of years later, and it's just completely wonderful. I also heard that Juliet Cross is doing a spin-off series, which I think is going to focus on one of the other werewolf packs we've been introduced to, and I can't wait because I am fully in love with this world that it needs more. It has this kind of like cozy Gilmore Girl vibe, I guess, set in New Orleans with supernatural creatures, and yeah, I'm obsessed. Even a little bit of a Charmed vibes, completely love it. Jumped a little out of order with that one just because I wanted to talk to the series together. I then read Devotion by Kay Lorraine and Meg Ann. This is a novella as part of the Make Games universe. This was so much fun. It's very short. There's a lot of spice, a lot of just domestic bliss moments, but it's been a while since we've been with Sunday, Noah, Alec, Caleb, and Kingston, so I loved kind of getting a check-in to see what they've been up to. So if you're reading it, would recommend not reading it until after you finish the Make Games death, because there is some spoilers, and also the end kind of gives a hint and a push into what's going to happen into the Make Game apocalypse. True to form for Kay Lorraine and Meg Ann, there is this soap opera, you know, telenovela, drama-filled and plot twist, which I love it. It's very self-aware, it's very fun. There even is, I think Caleb makes a comment about how, oh, this surely can't be my life. It sounds like a storyline from a soap opera. So I just completely adored it. I love the way that, yeah, again, the domestic bliss moments where you see them trying to have time with each other, but also, you know, just dealing with everyday life problems. So if you're waiting for the Make Games apocalypse like I am and need another snapshot back into this world, highly recommend picking this one up when it's released later this month. All right, then the last few books of the month, I really got stuck into my arc reading and I smashed out 4 review copies, which is great. So I will leave links to those reviews down below. Although admittedly, I say this all the time, but I am behind in writing reviews. I think I'm just in a writer's block, so some of them might not be there, but when they're there, I'll add them. So the first of the review copies I finished was Blood So Brutal by Emily Blackwood, which is the second book in her Golden City series. Now, this series definitely isn't over. It's very much the vibe of we've won the battle, now we've got the rest of the war, but it is the completion of Hunter and Wolf's duology. I am so thankful that this one picked up exactly where Wings So Wicked left off, because my god, what a cliffhanger ending that was. And this one, we really watched Hunter struggle to trust people. Time and time again throughout this book, we see that she's finally opening up to Wolf, to his brother Josiah, even to her adoptive pseudo-father Lord, and there just happens to be these moments just when she's like, okay, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'll trust, something happens, and it seems like she's being betrayed all over again. She does have this moment which I really appreciated. She's been forced, just through her family heritage, her blood, that she's supposed to save a lost city and rise up and be the rebellion leader for these people, but we get these moments of her just raging at the injustice of the fact that she doesn't want to do it. She just wants to go find her friend Remy, escape to Midgard, and live a very safe, boring, mundane life. So I loved getting to see her struggle with that, but ultimately she is a really kind-hearted person, so she does stand up and fight for that, but I just love that we did get this moment of doubt and just rage of that. For Wolf, we get his point of view, so we know what Hunter doesn't know, that this man is ride or die for her, and he's going to do everything, including making her think that he betrayed her again so that she can survive. And yeah, it's a really great conclusion to their relationship. There is kind of like a romantic-y, slight cliche that happens towards the end, but I love these characters so much that I don't even care. And in fact, if it didn't happen, I would have been fucking devastated. So yes, highly recommend this series. It's got trials, we've got vampires, angels, warring people, political intrigue. So if you like The Serpent and the Wings of Night, please pick up this series. It is absolutely fantastic. And then I picked up Worth His Salt by Rowan Wilder, and this is the second book in the Fakari Island series, which is this small town shifter romance, which we know small town paranormal is literally my jam, and it especially was my jam this month. This is actually a prequel book to the first one in her own right, and we are following Seb and Marin, and I completely loved getting to know a bit more about these characters. So obviously I feel like it's not really a spoiler to read them in publication order because it's a romance. Like, the fact that they're happily ever after in her own right makes sense, because that's the whole point of a romance. But I did also like getting to see, I've completely forgotten their names, I did like getting to see the two characters in her own right before their romance, so we kind of get to see that history, that friends but no one's wanting to cross the friends threshold moment. Marin is really lost. She's spent most of her adult life, and she's only in her late 20s, just kind of bouncing from career to career, from hobby to hobby, because she doesn't know what she wants. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know where she belongs. So her mother really is quite horrible and tries to control her and make sure that she's not too loud, she's not too overweight, she's not too confrontational, she's not too wild, she's not too out there, and is really trying to mold her into this perfect perfect image, but it's not really what she wants. So Marin's mum did line her up a job at a kind of wellness beauty magazine thing like Goop by Gwyneth Paltrow, like that kind of vibe, and she is going to run a article on the Fakari Island salt. They're supposed to have these like super amazing healing properties, and she wants to not only that line up a distribution deal with the Soren Salts company who make them the traditional Fakari way. So something happens and she's basically, this is the perfect opportunity. She's running from the drama, the event that's happened in her life, and ends up in the Isles. At this stage, the Fakari people have shut themselves off after some incidents in the 90s, and you can only visit one of the islands, which is like the touristy island. You're not allowed to go further, but Marin's hoping to use her connection with the fact that her father was a Fakari to get on the, you know, the other island, which happens, and she meets her aunt, and her aunt is so excited to have her back, and her cousin and everything, and Seb is not impressed. Seb thinks she is a true kind of mainlander and all she cares about is money, and is going to come in as an outsider and basically exploit their traditions and their culture to make a buck, and then she'll piss off essentially. And I love that there's this beautiful moment when she's invited, you know, to the rest of the islands, and Gabe, her cousin, is trying to explain things and trying to hide the werewolf element. But from Marin's point of view, her mum has made it seem like her dad lived and was raised in a cult. So she's asking all these questions like, oh, you guys live in like houses with lots of families, is that like a commune? And Gabe's like, yeah, kind of like a commune, I guess, if you're gonna use a word, because, you know, Gabe's like, I can't say pack because that's too werewolfy, and Marin's like, yep, cult confirmed. And I just absolutely love that dynamic. And then we have Seb, who is just this absolute grumpy grump, and he did the elder rite and ended up not really preparing for it, and ended up really hurting his leg, so he's in chronic pain. And he's heard, you know, from the legends and what stuff they have recorded, that the Fakari salts did have healing abilities, to the fact where they could basically like regenerate wounds and absolutely completely heal you, not just like give a temporary healing relief. But nowhere is it documented the actual traditional way that they did it, and actually centuries ago the Fakari people were aware of something happening, so they basically stocked up and did like a bulk salt making moment, because they were told that they wouldn't be able to produce it the same way. So at the moment they only have a limited amount left, they're not using it as much as they would be using it, and that's his really driving passion. He feels like he's lost himself. Marin's really finally found a place that she belongs, and I think she's just trying to consume everything. And there is this juxtaposition between the two, because Seb is kind of convinced that she's just going to piss off like her mum did. And thank God for Gabe, because the way he was able to kind of sit Sebastian down and get into his thick head about how he's reacting and like what's going on, kind of was that turning point needed, and their relationship kind of goes from there. They're very much an antagonistic, enemies to lovers, and Seb fucks up a few times, but I love the fact that he owns up to it, and he goes, yeah, I did cross a line, and I'm sorry, and I'm not going to do that again, and I understand how that hurt you. So I really appreciated that kind of emotional depth from him, and yeah, completely loved it. We find out Marin's a werewolf, she shifts, and then Seb, because he had some rage problems after being injured, is the only one to help her navigate her wolf and everything. And it is just so much fun. Highly recommend the series. So the islands kind of give this Scandinavian tribal vibe, and it gives me that kind of Brother Bear vibe, but like modern day. So that's the cozy vibes I get from it, is that movie. And then I picked up My Pucking Werewolf by Izzy Elliott, which is a debut, and we're following Lyra Adams, who is set to start college but's not having the best time of it. So she's been homeschooled her whole life, as her parents are photojournalists, and has basically raised her as they've been all across the world on their own assignments. And unfortunately her parents die in a car accident, so she is trying to navigate this new college experience where she's actually attending school with other people, with the fact that she is grieving her parents. And then we have Roman, who is the captain of a hockey team. Was uncertain if it was like NHL level or like the next level down, but anyway, and he's also a werewolf. There was an interesting juxtaposition of this world of just like your traditional new adult contemporary college student story with this kind of supernatural werewolf story. So I like the way that Izzy Elliott explained that in this world most of your athletes, rock stars, musicians, movie stars are supernatural people. like obviously. And it explained this like kind of otherworldly element we get from these celebrities, which I thought was fun. So the way these two meet is that in one of Lyra's assignments, she is tasked with interviewing a local sports team, and she gets Roman's team. Things don't go well when Roman first meets her and is very confused because his mate died centuries ago. They're immortal, and he walks into the interview room and sees her, and she is his mate. Lyra has no idea what's going on. Roman's trying to like backtrack and figure out what's happening. There is this like kind of political thing happening where he's already arranged to be married to this horrible woman, and his dad's scheming to get him the throne of this other realm where they come from. And yeah, it was a really fun time. I was interested in it. I liked that Roman was working hard to win Lyra's trust, and the way it ended was not expecting that. It's a very short book. It's only like less than 300 pages, and I was reading it and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know it was going to be a series at the time, and I was like, there's a lot of stuff happening here, and I don't know how we're going to wrap this up. And then the last bit happened, and I was like, oh, I need to know what happens now. And I think in the next books, I feel like we're going to get more of that fantasy, paranormal elements, which we'll be excited to read more about. Okay, and now we have my final book of the month, which is Trials of Dusk and Dreams by Lana Parachek, and it is the second book in the Fae Devils series. This book, hands down, one of my most anticipated reads after reading A Castles of Nevers and Nightmares earlier this year, so I can't say too much about it because it is a sequel, but just know that I love this book and this series and these characters with my whole being. My whole heart and soul goes into this world. And again, Lana, what was that ending? What was that? I think there's gonna be like potentially 6 books in this series, don't know. But what is happening with Tatiana? Puck has clearly lost his mind. And Emrys, why? Why did that happen? Like, no, I get why that happened, but how are we coming back from that? So I'm very thankful that this one kind of bled from the last book. So we are reeling with what happened with Fox, but we do get to meet Stick. He is this like, he just does not give a fuck. He is one of the Slur who does have his full abilities, and he just has this really carefree attitude, very impulsive, like if he wants it, he's just gonna do it vibe, and I think he's a fun time. But Bowden is really the main hero that we're forming a relationship with in here. He is really struggling with something he can't remember. So as part of the curse that Tatiana, the fairy queen, has put on the Slur, they've been cursed and their memories have been trapped, but it's pretty particularly bad with Bowden. If Fox or Styx doesn't show them their Slur form every now and then, he doesn't really remember what's happening. If you haven't been around him for a couple of days, Bowden doesn't really remember who you are. That was a big struggle for them and Willow, and he's having these nightmares about canary feathers and blood, and he knows he's done something bad, and he believes his role of the group is to be the protector. So if anything happens to his brothers, he gets quite defeatist. So I did like the fact that as the book progressed, he realizes what's happened. He kind of understands, and the way that Legion is there to kind of explain that it wasn't his fault was just beautiful. I love their dynamic. Varen still owns my heart and soul with his little bee talk. He is just the sweetest of all sweet cinnamon rolls, and he needs to be protected at all costs. Legion is interesting. He's definitely your political mind. He is like 17 steps ahead. He has seen all the players, all the things. He has a goal that's to protect the Slur, that is protect his brothers, get their freedom, and also now Willow's involved in that situation as well. And I like the way that he understands that everyone of his family has a role to play, and he's there to just make sure everyone does all the stuff and things. So that was great. And then Willow, I think she's kind of finally finding her footing with her friends, the other Nevers, and trying to continue on with these trials that she's roped herself in to win the dream, and she's doing what she can to make sure that her friends are protected. There is this overwhelming sense of guilt that she may be the cause of them being here and hasn't been able to find a way to tell them that. And so that was really interesting. I am very sad that I finished it so quickly and I need to wait for the next book, but highly recommend if you're in the mood for a fantasy romance with why choose, enemies to lovers, complicated political interest. This was absolutely one wonderful, and I'm probably gonna reread them at some stage. I'm also probably gonna own multiple copies of this series because I've already started, and why stop now? So there you have it. There are the 14 books I read in August. It was a really good reading month. I'm really happy that I caught up to date with some series, got through a number of arcs, and then I finished a series as well. So that's a big win. Comment down below and let me know what your favorite month of August is. Or you can leave me, what emoji do we want? Or you can leave me a wolf emoji. We did have a lot of paranormal and a lot of wolves, so let's go with the wolf emoji. Linked in the description box below, I will leave links to all these books and any reviews I have, along with links to my social media channels if you'd like to talk to me or follow me on any other corner of the internet. Please like and subscribe. I'll be posting new videos every Sunday. Anyway, that's all from me today, guys. I hope you're doing all kinds of well, and I will speak to you soon. See ya!